Welcome everybody, my name is Will and this is my best finds of 2013 episode. So everything I talk about in this video is special to me for some reason or another, either because it's really cheap, was really uncommon, or it was just something that I really wanted for a long time and just never came across for whatever reason. So the first thing I want to talk about is this copy of the Jetsons for the NES that I picked up back in July of 2013. This was $55, and that's what I paid for it. It was actually marked at $61. I had seen this sitting in a comic book store in California for roughly 6 months, and when I first looked at it, $61 was about market value. But by the time I actually picked this up in July, the value had shot up to about $80, and it's kind of sitting between $80 and $100 now. So even though $55 was a lot for an NES game, especially a card-only NES game, this is something that I'm sure is going to just shoot up in value even more and more, just like all NES games are. And this is a relatively uncommon game, and honestly I've never run across this before and haven't run across it since, so I'm kind of looking at it as an investment. I mean, I love collecting NES games, and I don't think I'm ever going to find this for any cheaper than $55. So that's why I'm mentioning that. Not exactly a home run. I purchased a PS2 Fat for $5. It was system only at Goodwill a couple months ago. I don't remember exactly when it was, but it works flawlessly. It cleaned up very well. No issues with that. $5, you can't beat that. I stopped by Salvation Army thrift store in either April or May of 2013, and I got a whole stack of games. I think they were mostly GameCube, but the two standouts from that stack that I got, I believe they were $4 each. I got a copy of Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2 for the GameCube, and I also got a copy of Dot Hack GU Volume 1 Rebirth for PlayStation 2, and these are both complete. They're relatively pricey games. I think they're about $30 or $40 each. So the reason those are special is not necessarily because these are two of my favorite games in the world, because they're not. But they are pricey, and I got them for $4 a piece. I'm definitely going to hold on to these for a little while. Eventually I plan on getting to trying these out, but they're not high on my list at all. So there's a thrift store in town here in New Mexico called Thrift Town that I frequently stop at. I found a Game Boy Color, which is the Pokemon edition, and it also had a copy of Pokemon Yellow, which I've sold off already, but this and the game were marked at $2.99, which is a phenomenal price because this alone is pretty pricey. I have gotten into collecting Game Boy and Game Boy Color variations, so this is a really neat find for me. I don't think I've ever actually seen one of these before up close anyway. So to find it for $3 was really phenomenal, and then with a game that basically paid for the entire lot of stuff that I bought that day is even better. Now this is an honorable mention to me only because I already have one, but while I was living in Southern California, like I said, I found a lot of stuff there. I really did. I found a whole lot of stuff out there, and one of the more interesting finds, and one of the things that just kind of made me scratch my head, like when I saw it, I just kind of had to do a double take because I couldn't believe I was seeing it in a thrift store. But I found a Sega Nomad, a working Sega Nomad. I didn't know it at the time, for $10. So at $10, I sat there and I thought about it for a little bit because I do actually already own one, and I figured, you know, $10 for something that might be broken, but you know, at $10 you take the chance, you really do, and it works flawlessly. So I actually do have two of them in my collection now, so if I didn't already have one, this would definitely be in my top 5 for the year. So another thing that I picked up that would have been in my top 5 had I not already had it, I picked up a Game Boy Micro from a Christian thrift store here in New Mexico. This is when I first moved out here. I was doing my rounds of all the thrift stores in the area, trying to figure out which ones are good and which ones are not so good. This was only $10. Now it didn't come with the charger or any games, but at $10 I was willing to take the risk, and it does work perfectly. I do have an extra charger now. These are actually pretty expensive. If you're a gamer, you probably already know that, but you just don't come across these very often. You really don't. So at $10, I think it was an amazing find. Now that I've gotten through all the honorable mentions, it's time to get to the stuff that really had me excited this year. One of the things that I was happiest about getting is probably not something that most people would be super excited about and put in their top 5, but I was a Sega Genesis guy growing up. You know, it's my dad had an NES, and then he had a Master System and a Sega Genesis, and quite honestly, the Sega Genesis ruled in that household. So I love the Sega Genesis. I do have several of them, but I never had a boxed Sega Genesis, and I actually found a boxed Sega Genesis. It's the Streets of Rage 2 edition. This was $20 at Goodwill, believe it or not. And this was at a Goodwill where I almost never found anything game related. I just happened to go in one day and it was sitting there. This comes with everything except for Streets of Rage 2 and an RF or AV adapter, which is really no big deal because, again, I do have several of these. I have plenty of AV adapters. I have plenty of RF switches. So finally got myself a boxed Sega Genesis. I quite honestly would have rather had the original release with Altered Beast on the box, which is what I had growing up. But still, you know, this is a Model 1 Sega Genesis in the box. It's in really good shape. Not much more to say about that, but it looks great on the shelf. So in April of 2013, I was actually thinking about getting out of the whole collecting thing. I had started up in November of 2012 after taking like a 6-year hiatus from it. It was just getting really expensive and really consuming, you know, just energy-wise and time-wise. But I was still very infrequently go out to the thrift stores, and one of the things that I found was really quite amazing to me. I never had one of these growing up, but found an Atari Lynx with the carry case and a whole stack of games. This would probably be higher on the list had it not been for the fact that this was $40. But still, at $40, it was a great value. The games that it came with were Blue Lightning, RPB, or APB, excuse me, Clax, Turbo Sub, Stun Runner, Viking Child, everybody's favorite, Miss Pac-Man, which I think I have on every system that I own, Zarlor Mercenary, and Road Blasters. Now, I remember seeing this in the thrift store and thinking, you know, there's no batteries and there's actually a missing battery cover. So that kind of sucks, but there was no batteries in it. I couldn't test it out. So $40 was quite the gamble, but because it had the games, I was willing to take that gamble and wound up paying off. Sometimes you gotta wiggle the cartridge around to get it to work properly, but it does work. And this is one of those things, you know, I had a Game Gear when I was growing up. I didn't have a Game Boy. Didn't even know anybody with an Atari Lynx, but I remember seeing the ads for these in the magazines, and I always wanted to try it out. It's a neat little system. It really is. It's very cool, and I'm glad to have this in my collection finally. Now at number 3, this is on the list because I'd say it's probably very uncommon to find something like this in this condition. Back in, I think, February of 2000, maybe it was March of 2013, I picked myself up a Miracle piano in the box with everything that needs to be in this box. All the manuals, headphones, foot pedal, the discs, and all that stuff is unopened in the plastic, with the exception of, what was it? I think the foot pedal. The box is in relatively decent condition. There's a couple flaws in it. You know, it's a little beat up, but you know, this thing is old, and I bought this for $40. Now, a funny story about this is not the first Miracle piano that I found in the box. Actually, at the same thrift store that I bought this for, and I bought this for $40, by the way. This was actually the second one I found within a matter of, I think, 2 months. The first one I saw was in the box, but it didn't have any cords, any discs, or anything like that. And the box was really beat up, but that one was also $40, and at $40 I had to pass on it, and I sat there and I thought about it for a good week or so, and I decided to get it, but by the time I changed my mind, it was already gone. Now, lucky enough for me, only a few weeks later, it couldn't have been more than a month later, I found another one with everything that was supposed to be in there, all the cords, all the styrofoam packing, all the manuals and stuff, and everything is in absolute mint condition inside this box. for the same price, and I happily scooped it up as soon as I saw it. Again, this is one of those things you just don't see every day. Yeah, this is just to mention, this is not a console specific version. This one is actually touted as the Amiga version. However, all you need is a cable to hook it up to an NES, and of course the cartridge, or Sega Genesis, or Super Nintendo. But I think the only difference between the actual console specific versions is, correct me if I'm wrong, I might not be correct on this, but I think the only other version that was released was a Nintendo specific version, and the difference was that there was a Nintendo seal of approval sticker, I think, on the keyboard. Not 100% on that, but anyway, it works perfectly. It's a pain in the ass to get it out of this box though, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this away. But that's my number 3 pickup for the year. So my number 2 pickup for the year 2013, and I actually did a video about this right after I picked it up. I don't think any of this stuff was on video, or I made a video about it because it was all picked up before I actually started doing videos. But I went to, what was it, Savers here in New Mexico, and I did my rounds around the store, didn't find anything. I actually had a copy of Silent Hill 4 for the Xbox in my hand, and I was thinking about getting it. I was on the fence about it, and I decided to put it back and just leave. But when I did go back to the video game section to put this back, a lady had just put this stuff on the shelf, and I'm so glad that all that happened and transpired the way it did, because this is some amazing stuff. So for $2.99 each, I got a copy of Super Mario World for Super Nintendo, Donkey Kong Country 2 for Super Nintendo, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, I believe this is a special edition, and then I got a copy of Ocarina of Time for the 64 with the box. There's no manual, but this is also a collector's edition. And then I got a copy of Final Fantasy 3. I don't know if there was a map that was supposed to be included in this, but the instruction booklet is in here. Obviously the cartridge in the box. I mean, it's pretty amazing. Like, well, how do you find that stuff at thrift stores these days? I mean, it just very rarely happens. So $3 each on those. Funny story about Final Fantasy 3. This is not the first copy that I found in 2013 at a thrift store. I saw a copy of Final Fantasy 3 and The Secret of Mana in a box at a thrift store in Southern California, and they had it behind their little glass case where they keep all the expensive stuff. So when I saw that, honestly, my heart was about to explode. I was so excited until I saw the price. They were marked at eBay prices. So when I saw that, I just kind of, you know, scoffed at it and just moved on. But it's something that kind of ate away at me, and it was something that just really bugged me. You know, I figured that I'd probably never find those again, you know, in boxes like that. And they were both in really good shape. Secret Mana, the box was a little bit beat up, but it was something that I thought about for a good week and a half or so. And for whatever reason, I just finally broke down and actually went back and bought them. I really regret doing that, especially because I found Final Fantasy 3 complete at another store. I was still a little bit wet behind the ears at the time. I had only been collecting for like 6 or 7 months. So it was one of those things that I knew both of those games were very uncommon, and it was even more uncommon to find them in their boxes and or with manuals. So I never thought I'd see those things again, and it just so happens that, you know, the more you go to thrift stores, flea markets, and that sort of thing, the more you're going to find this stuff. So one thing I'll never do again is buy anything from a thrift store, flea market, what have you, at an eBay price or a retail price. So for my number 1 pickup of 2013, this is something I picked up from a thrift store out here in New Mexico. I was actually out here in July from California looking for a place to live, and I decided to just kind of cruise the town and see where all the thrift stores were, what kind of thrift stores they had, look at the game stores, that sort of thing. And it was pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. I was not looking forward to it, especially because I found so much stuff in Southern California at the thrift stores, and here it's really dry. You know, it's really tough to find anything out here. And at the time, I don't think I found anything at a thrift store, nothing game related, except maybe like a copy of Madden 2004 or something like that for like $8. It was pretty ridiculous. So this was actually the first time that I actually visited Thrift Town out here, and I was actually blown away at what I saw. So I was walking through the electronics section, and I was actually really shocked to find something that I don't ever find. I found a stack of Sega Saturn sports games. I think there were like 4 of them in the stack. Now this was amazing to me because I had never seen a Sega Saturn game at a thrift store before or a flea market. So I think I had maybe 8 games for the Sega Saturn at the time, and I bought all of these back in like 2004 when I got my initial system. But the clerk who was putting the stuff on the shelf saw me walking around with them, and he's like, "Hey, I got a bunch more stuff over here." So I followed him to his cart, and I saw a Sega Saturn sitting there with a power cord and a memory card plus marked at $10. That in itself was pretty amazing, but upon further inspection, I saw an entire stack of games. Now there are 21 games here, and these were all marked at $3 a piece. There's a copy of Battle Sport that was actually stuck in one of the other cases, so that was basically a freebie. But we got, and some of these have manuals and some don't. I think most of the really good ones have the manual though. So I'm going to go through this. Command & Conquer, there's no manual for this one. Amok, Andretti Racing, Bug 2. I'm sorry if I'm getting some glare from the light, but the lighting in here is absolutely horrible, and I have to have them kind of directed at me. Now I haven't gotten a chance to play this one yet, but this is one of the 2 games in this lot that I'm really excited to try out eventually once I get to it. But Darius Gaiden. Hopefully it shows up well. What is this? Impact Racing. Now I'm not a big racing fan at all, and there are a lot of racing games, and there's some sports games in here too. I actually thought about leaving those behind, but because of the fact that I never ever see Sega Saturn stuff, I had to get them. So moving along, Iron Storm, Mech Warrior 2, Mr. Bones, and I really wish this one had the manual. Myst, NFL Quarterback Club 97. This is definitely one that I was thinking about leaving behind. Pandemonium, PTO, Quarterback Attack, another winner. I believe this is a full motion video football game. Imagine how that one plays. Something I was really excited about when I saw this lot of games was Road Rash, because I absolutely love this release of Road Rash. I've only played the one on PlayStation, but you know, it's the same game more or less. Very excited to have that. Need for Speed, another one that I didn't necessarily want to, you know, take, but you know, $3, sure. Robo Pit, SimCity 2000, Solar Eclipse, and finally Theme Park. So I found a lot of good stuff this year, and the reason that the Sega Saturn lot was the #1 thing that I found is more or less because you just don't find that amount of stuff for the Saturn in any thrift store setting ever. The $10 for the system was pretty much made up by the memory card by itself. So I more than doubled my Sega Saturn collection right there. It was really amazing to find it. I think that was pretty much the only thing that I found during the week that I was down here. while I was looking for a place to live. So, you know, I didn't have much hope, but there was a little bit of hope, you know, after finding that stuff. So I started collecting again seriously in August of 2012. And I've been watching the Game Chasers, and I don't know how I stumbled upon that. I was never a big YouTube guy, and somebody introduced me to it. Somebody at work introduced me to it. And, you know, it just kind of got going from there. I started watching Retro Hunters and Ryan Right Now and a bunch of other guys. So I kind of got the idea that I was going to start going to flea markets and thrift stores and that sort of thing. But I didn't actually start going to flea markets and thrift stores until November, very late November of 2012. So the very first time that I walked into a thrift store, funny enough, I actually found a top loader for $5 and a dog bone controller for $3, and I think an RF switch for like $2 or $3. There was another stack of common games that were like $3 or $4 a piece. And I'd been looking for a top loader for I don't know how long. It had to be at least 10 years. But I was never willing to pay, you know, $60, $70 plus for a top loader. But the very first time that I went there, amazingly enough, I found a top loader, and that was it for me. I was totally into this. I was jumping into it head first, and I was going to do it. And I haven't looked back since. So 2013 and the end of 2012 were very good to me. I think when I first started collecting again, I probably had maybe 500 or 600 games in my collection, and I'm approaching 1,500 now within the course of a year. So that's quite a bit of stuff that I brought in. Hopefully 2014 will be a lot better for me as far as quality. I'm definitely not looking to bring in nearly as much stuff as I had been, but I'm definitely looking forward to thinning out some of the excess that I have in my collection. I know I bought a lot of crap when I first started collecting again. I pretty much bought anything that I found if it was cheap. But I definitely want to thin that out. I want to get rid of some of the doubles as far as systems that I have, and hopefully start trading with folks, because that's one of the reasons I started doing these videos initially, is just to kind of get into the community and start, you know, interacting and trading and swapping and whatnot. But that hasn't happened yet. So anyway, I had a good 2013. Hopefully you guys did too. Hopefully 2014 will be better for all of us. I appreciate you guys watching. Peace. And the dog bone controller. This is not the dog bone controller. This is the piece of shit. Why is this in here? For $3 a piece. Fuck! Try that again. Yeah. I'm just glad to be done with it. Fuck. And it better be fucking recording.